Imagine standing on a mountainside thousands of years ago, as wisdom that would shape the world echoes through the air. Today we dive deep into one of the most profound teachings in human history. The Sermon on the Mount, as recounted in the Gospel of Matthew, chapters 5 through 7. This sermon is not just a cornerstone of Christian ethics, it's a guide for living with compassion, righteousness, and spiritual depth. From the radical Beatitudes to the Lord's Prayer, Jesus outlines principles that challenge and inspire. As we explore these teachings, we invite you to reflect on their timeless relevance and the transformative power they hold for our lives today. The Beatitudes stand as a beacon of Jesus' teachings, inviting us into a radical reimagining of blessedness. At the heart of the Sermon on the Mount, they pivot away from worldly measures of success, guiding us instead towards spiritual depth and divine connection. Blessed are the poor in spirit, Jesus begins, challenging us to embrace our spiritual neediness as the true gateway to the kingdom of heaven. This profound humility sets the stage for the ensuing blessings, each unfolding a layer of the kingdom's paradoxical nature. Mourning is met with comfort, a divine promise that in our deepest sorrows we are not forsaken, but cradled by a comforting presence. The meek, those who tread gently upon the earth with humble strength, are assured an inheritance beyond measure, the very earth itself. Then, an insatiable hunger and thirst for righteousness is declared, not only noble, but destined to be satisfied, painting a picture of a world where justice and integrity reign supreme. Mercy emerges as a two-way street. The merciful receive mercy, a divine cycle that underscores the power of compassion and forgiveness. Purity of heart, an undivided loyalty to what is true and good, becomes the lens through which we see God, a vision promised to those whose hearts are uncluttered by deceit. Peacemakers are then elevated to the status of God's children, embodying the divine nature in their quest for reconciliation in a fractured world. Finally, the Beatitudes circle back to the kingdom of heaven, affirming it as the reward for those persecuted for righteousness' sake. This full circle moment underscores a radical theme. The kingdom belongs to those who live counter to the world's expectations, who face opposition with a steadfast heart. In weaving together these blessings, Jesus sketches a portrait of a life rich in spiritual depth, marked by moral integrity, mercy, purity, peace, and resilience in the face of persecution. The Beatitudes call us to a higher way of living, one that prioritizes divine values over worldly success, inviting us into a journey of transformation that begins with acknowledging our deep need for God and unfolds in a life lived in radical alignment with His kingdom. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus employs two powerful metaphors to illustrate the essential role of His followers in the world: salt of the earth and light of the world. These images convey the influence and responsibility Christians are to have in society. As salt, followers of Christ are called to preserve goodness and inhibit moral decay. Just as salt enhances flavor, Christians are to enrich the world's moral and spiritual dimensions, living out the principles of the kingdom in such a way that they bring out the best in humanity. This metaphor warns against losing one's distinctiveness or effectiveness, emphasizing that salt that has lost its taste is of no use. It's a call to maintain one's faith and character in a world that can be corrupting, to remain true to one's values and thereby prevent moral dilution. Similarly, being the light of the world speaks to the visibility of Christians' actions and the clarity they should bring to moral and spiritual confusion. Light dispels darkness, guiding those who are lost and illuminating truth. Followers of Jesus are to live in such a way that their lives illuminate the path to God, guiding others by their example of love, justice, and mercy. This light is not meant to be hidden, but is to shine brightly before others so they may see the good works and glorify God. Together, these metaphors encapsulate a vision of Christian engagement with the world that is active and transformative. Christians are to be agents of change, preserving what is good, purifying what is corrupt, and illuminating what is true. Through their presence and actions, they are to influence society positively, just as salt changes the flavor of food and light transforms darkness into light. This calling is profound, challenging each believer to reflect on how their life contributes to the betterment of the world, embodying the values of the kingdom of heaven in everyday actions and interactions. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus addresses the relationship between his teachings and the Jewish law, asserting, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them." This statement is pivotal, revealing Jesus' respect for the law while introducing a deeper, more comprehensive understanding of its purpose. He emphasizes the continuity of his message with the Old Testament teachings, affirming that true righteousness exceeds the legalistic adherence to the law. Jesus critiques the superficial compliance with the law practiced by the religious leaders of the time, suggesting that mere outward obedience is insufficient. He seeks to guide his followers to a righteousness that springs from the heart, focusing on the spirit rather than the letter of the law. This approach calls for an internal transformation that influences external actions, highlighting principles such as love, mercy, and purity of heart over ritualistic practices. For instance, Jesus deepens the commandment against murder to include anger and insult, and he expands the prohibition of adultery to include lustful thoughts. These teachings underscore that righteousness involves not just actions but the intentions and thoughts behind them. By doing so, Jesus sets a high moral standard, inviting his followers to pursue a holiness that affects every aspect of their lives, including their relationships with others. Furthermore, Jesus' fulfillment of the law also points to his role in bringing God's promises to fruition. He embodies the law, perfectly living out its commands and revealing its fullest intent. Through his life, death, and resurrection, he accomplishes what the law could not, providing a way for people to enter into a right relationship with God. In essence, Jesus' teaching on the fulfillment of the law invites believers to a deeper, more authentic engagement with God's commandments. It's not about discarding the law, but about understanding and living it in a way that reflects its true purpose: to love God and neighbor fully. This perspective challenges believers to examine their hearts and lives, ensuring that their righteousness is not just outward, but emanates from a deep inner commitment to follow God's will. Within the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus imparts a series of ethical and moral teachings that challenge conventional attitudes and behaviors, urging a radical reevaluation of how one interacts with others and adheres to spiritual principles. These teachings, which cover a broad spectrum of human conduct, emphasize the importance of intention, the spirit behind one's actions, and the transformative power of love and humility. Jesus begins by addressing anger, equating it with murder and its potential to harm relationships. He underscores the necessity of reconciliation, urging individuals to resolve disputes and foster peace. This radical call to harmony extends beyond mere avoidance of conflict, highlighting the profound impact of inner attitudes on external behaviors. Adultery and lust are also scrutinized, with Jesus emphasizing purity, not just in actions, but in thoughts, challenging his followers to guard their hearts and minds. This teaching elevates the standard of faithfulness, emphasizing the sanctity of marriage and the importance of honoring one's commitments in both thought and deed. On the subject of oaths, Jesus advises simplicity and honesty, instructing his followers to let their yes be yes and their no, no. This guidance fosters trustworthiness and integrity, advocating for a straightforwardness that reflects a deep commitment to truth. The directive to love one's enemies and pray for those who persecute is perhaps one of the most counterintuitive yet transformative teachings. It challenges the natural inclination towards retaliation, advocating instead for a love that transcends personal grievances. This radical love reflects the nature of divine compassion, calling for a generosity of spirit that extends even to those who wish us harm. Generosity and the treatment of the needy are addressed with the instruction to give quietly and without seeking recognition. This approach to charity emphasizes the value of sincerity and humility, advocating for acts of kindness motivated by genuine compassion rather than the desire for public acclaim. These teachings collectively form a comprehensive ethical framework that promotes a life of integrity, compassion, and spiritual depth. They call for a radical inward change, that manifests in outward actions, urging followers to live in a way that reflects the kingdom of heaven. By adhering to these principles, individuals are challenged to transcend conventional morality, embodying a righteousness that stems from a pure heart and a profound commitment to love. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus provides profound guidance on prayer and fasting, emphasizing the importance of sincerity and privacy in these spiritual disciplines. He cautions against performing religious acts for the sake of being seen by others, advocating instead for a genuine, heartfelt connection with God. Regarding prayer, Jesus introduces the Lord's Prayer as a model, encapsulating the essence of what prayer should be. This prayer is not just a set of words to be recited, but a framework for how to approach God, with reverent submission to His will, requests for daily needs, forgiveness, and guidance away from temptation. The emphasis is on the simplicity and sincerity of prayer, suggesting that the value of prayer lies not in verbose petitions but in the genuine expression of one's heart and desires to God. Similarly, when teaching about fasting, Jesus instructs to not make a show of it, but to fast in a manner that is not apparent to others. The focus is on the spiritual purpose behind fasting, drawing closer to God, not on seeking admiration from people. This private discipline underscores the personal nature of one's relationship with God, encouraging individuals to seek His approval above human recognition. Both teachings highlight a theme central to Jesus' message. The inward state of the heart is what matters most to God. He looks beyond external appearances and rituals to see the true intentions and desires of individuals. In doing so, Jesus invites His followers to a deeper, more authentic spiritual life, one that prioritizes a personal and sincere relationship with God over outward religiosity. Through these teachings on prayer and fasting, Jesus sets forth a vision of spirituality that is accessible, intimate, and centered on an authentic engagement with the divine. These practices are not ends in themselves, but means to cultivate a deeper faith, humility, and dependence on God. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus addresses the human tendency to worry about material possessions, urging a shift in focus from earthly treasures to spiritual riches. He presents a compelling argument. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Jesus warns against the enslavement to wealth, emphasizing that it's impossible to serve both God and money. This teaching challenges the listener to examine their priorities, encouraging a life that values spiritual over material wealth. The emphasis is on trust in God's provision. Worrying about life's necessities, food, drink, clothing, demonstrates a lack of faith in God's care and provision. He further illustrates this point by observing the birds of the air and the flowers of the field, which do not labor or spin, yet are provided for and adorned by God. If God so cares for the natural world, how much more will He care for His children? Therefore, Jesus counsels, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own. This teaching invites a radical trust in God and a reorientation of one's life away from the pursuit of material wealth to the pursuit of the kingdom of God and His righteousness, with the assurance that by doing so all these things will be given as well. It's a call to live in the present, entrusting one's needs and future to God's loving care, thereby freeing individuals from the anxiety and distraction of material concerns. In the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus presents a compelling vision for a life grounded in spiritual values rather than material concerns. He urges us to seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, promising that our essential needs will be met. This profound teaching invites us to trust in divine provision, prioritize spiritual over material wealth, and live with a heart oriented towards eternal values. It's a call to a life of faith, integrity, and compassion, challenging us to reflect the light of God's love in every aspect of our being.